watching all of this today and since Kavanaugh was nominated is Arash Ari Aramesh. He is a lawyer and legal commentator, and he joins us now from New York. And so let me ask you, Senator Collins is voting to confirm. We're hearing Manchin is voting to confirm. It looks very likely that Brett Kavanaugh is going to be the next Supreme Court justice in the United States. Did you see that coming?
Well, it was very hard to make any predictions until last minute. Senator Murkowski of Alaska, who is a much more conservative senator than Susan Collins of Maine is, announced she would not vote for Judge Kavanaugh to become the next Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. So it was not clear now that the vote is down to Joe Manchin, a very conservative Blue Dog Democrat, nonetheless, from West Virginia, and Susan Collins, a Northeast moderate Republican, and a woman. How would they come down to vote? But again, it seemed from the very get-go when she started her speech on the Senate floor that she's going to vote for Judge Kavanaugh. And again, this is going to be a razor thin. I believe it's the smallest margin that we've ever had a Associate Justice of the Supreme Court confirmed to the high bench, 51-49. And again, it's been a tough battle. It's been a nasty fight. And there's a lot of stains now, not on the process itself, but this will have some implications for the court itself and on decisions that, especially on a lot of 5-4 minority decisions that the court is going to issue in the many, many years to come.
Now, before the senators made their decisions, we learned that the American Bar Association informed the Senate Judiciary Committee that it was reevaluating Kavanaugh's well-qualified rating following his testimony on sexual assault allegations against him. What do you think the significance of that is?
And that was a first. I do not recall that the American Bar Association has ever reevaluated its evaluation of an associate justice nominee for the Supreme Court. So that itself shows that the ABA has serious doubts and serious concerns about Judge Kavanaugh's qualifications. In addition to that, over 2,400 or maybe 3,400 professors from various law schools, most of whom teach constitutional law or admin law, wrote a letter. Many of my professors from my law school wrote an open letter, some of whom are actually not liberals, some of whom are conservatives or moderates, saying that Judge Kavanaugh does not have the temperament or the right personality or perhaps the right background to be an associate justice on the Supreme Court, a lifetime appointment. But let me add a bit of context to this and why this judicial fight has become so nasty. For almost the vast majority, throughout most of American history, you needed 60 votes, 60 out of 100 votes in the Senate to confirm any federal judge, appeals court judge, district court judge, or Supreme Court justice. Same thing for cabinet secretaries. But these sort of oppositions to blocking federal judgeships and also Supreme Court justices became so partisan in 2003 when the Republicans had a majority, a razor-thin majority in the Senate. They flirted with the idea of changing the rules from 60 to 50, but they didn't. In 2013, it was the Democrats under Senator Harry Reid of Nevada that changed the rules. When they had a very thin majority in the Senate, Democrats changed the rules and brought sort of the threshold from 60 to just a simple 51 or 50 majority so they could get their nominees through. And now we see when you get rid of a rule and you change the rules of the play, sometimes you have to pay back and you pay for it down the road. And again, this is one of the many consequences of that decision. And very briefly, another reason that we have so much partisanship now is, again, because of this simple majority rule now, presidents get to appoint much more partisan candidates for the Supreme Court. Back in the day, most justices who were appointed were, if even on the liberal side or the conservative side, were closer to the middle so they could attract votes from the other side. We've had many justices who were appointed by a Republican, for instance, who became liberals. John Paul Stevens, appointed by Nixon, became a liberal lion on the Supreme Court. David Souter, appointed by President George Herbert Walker Bush, and the list goes on and on and on. But now, when you only need a simple majority, that means you probably don't need the other party, and you can just push your agenda through. And that's not a very good thing.
You know, it's interesting that Senator Collins was going through his record and praising his record. What you're doing, what I understand the American Bar Association is doing, you're not talking about his positions or his philosophy. You are questioning his caliber based on his record?
Well, I do have serious doubts about some of his positions, too. Again, he is too partisan for many moderates. He has held a number of political positions, for instance, in previous administration, in the Bush administration. He was the staff secretary. We have seen what has happened. Like another example that comes to mind, for instance, Justice Rehnquist, who later on became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and was one of the most conservative sort of voices on the bench. He had a political position in the Department of Justice under Nixon. He was not a federal judge. He was not sort of a legal scholar before that. He was a scholar of the law, but he had a political position in the DOJ. So, but again, even he managed to clear the 60-vote hurdle back in the day when he was appointed in the 70s. I do have some issues with Judge Kavanaugh's ideological positions on a number of issues, but that aside, the main problem today with Judge Kavanaugh is serious questions about his past and serious questions about not sexual harassment. We're talking about sexual assault, and clearly two different things. And secondly, the way he handled it, the threats that he made, the bringing up the name of the Clintons and so on and so forth. And again, he is going to have to hear cases.
Well, Senator Collins, Senator Collins says, look, we have to base our decisions on the presumption of innocence, even though it wasn't a trial. She acknowledged that. And she says the allegations for her failed to meet the more than likely than not standard. So what do you say to that?
And that is Senator Collins' opinion, and she's entitled to that. I strongly disagree. I think this was not thoroughly investigated. FBI's hands were tied, and we rushed it through. And now I understand why, because the Republicans didn't want to wait till the midterms, and they wanted to get this over with. And they're okay with having this fight because they're going to get a 5-4 majority and a lifetime appointment for a very conservative Supreme Court justice. But again, as I said, Senator Lisa Murkowski from the state of Alaska, which is much more conservative place, and she's a much more conservative senator than Susan Collins of Maine, in the Northeast and very close to you guys geographically. She decided to toe the partisan line, and Lisa Murkowski decided not to do that, and there's a difference. On the other hand, we saw Joe Manchin, for instance, to go and vote with the Republican majority. And I don't think it's going to help him politically in West Virginia because, yes, he may save himself from some attacks, but again, at the end of the day, the base is going to be very upset with him in West Virginia. And again, what good is a senator of either party if one of your most important decisions, which is to vote yay or nay for a Supreme Court justice for a lifetime appointment, you decide to vote against the main platforms and the main sort of ideological keys of you and your party. So,
yeah, very interesting, Arash. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much. That is lawyer and legal commentator Ari Aramesh in New York.